Hello everybody, this is PotterBrony, and welcome to another blind reaction of Dragon Ball Z DBCember Top 10 Villains Parts 4 and 5, which is going to be 6 through 1. Yeah, I would have gotten it done sooner, but then I just, silly me, decided to just take the week off. But now I'm back, and going to finish up this list. Both these are over 15 minutes, so this is going to be a fairly long video. Well, I've made longer, but either way, let's get it started. Just see what they have in store for us and what their explanation is. Starting with part number 4, which I believe is 6, 5, and 4, I think. Oh, we'll see. In 3, 2, 1, and go. Not December anymore, but what are you gonna do?
6. Wait, Boo didn't make the top 5? What salt-ridden hell have you wrought upon us?
Sorry, guys.
You're including with Bibbidi and Bobbidi?
In Dragon Ball, someone had to be left out of the top 5, and unfortunately, Boo just doesn't got it.
It all comes down to the fact that while he's certainly not a bad villain, he can just be kind of boring.
And the worst part is that he doesn't start out that way at all. When Boo's first revealed with his sprightly grin and lighthearted voice belying the mystic monster that he is, it's incredibly unsettling. The entire cast is caught off guard by his appearance, and that alone helps sell how terrifying he truly is. And terrifying doesn't even begin to describe it.
In a quest for universal domination, the evil alien wizard Bibbidi summoned to his aid the Majin Buu. With his power, they mercilessly slaughtered 4 of the 5 Supreme Kais who protected the universe. Boo even absorbing one of them in his conquest, and nearly eliminated Earth. It was thanks to the Eastern Supreme Kai that Bibbidi was destroyed, and Boo left sealed away for eternity.
Or at least would have, if not for his doppelganger/son Bobbidi, who employs the king of the demon ring.
Not really son,
the
from what I hear.
Punisher to full power, crashing the World Martial Arts Tournament to do so, and setting up a chain of events that would push the entire universe to the brink.
And there are a lot of things that separate Boo from previous villains, from his concept to his motives to his overall design. His bubblegum color scheme mixed with an Arabian genie aesthetic all on its own would be enough to fully separate him from his peers. But his jolly attitude and rotund shape are just disarming.
He's essentially a child given superpowers. His love for sweets extends as far as to turn people into literal candy, then devour them on a bender to end all humanity. He wants very little more than pure pleasure, finding both delight in pastries and wanton destruction of a citywide scale.
The best traits about Boo so far, as we've listed, mostly continue through his initial transformation. Though he loses his disarming jolly exterior, his chaotic nature and lust for personal satisfaction at the cost of lives stays true. Super Boo starts off as the next logical step in Boo's evolution, from chaotic neutral to chaotic evil. He now has one true goal in mind, a fighter that will satisfy his needs for battle.
Which actually makes him a fantastic parallel to Goku, a man who hungers for food and battle, sometimes over the better interest of those around him. Unfortunately, this is never really explored within the series itself, but from a meta perspective, it's a facet of Boo that definitely makes him unique. Before his absorption of Piccolo and Gotenks, and we're left with a bland or perfect cell.
And there's where we come to the crux of the problem with evolution Boo.
That's a good point.
An unkillable form makes for an unbelievable force to be reckoned with. But with each evolution, he merely grows less interesting. What started as a unique and unsettling villain turns into yet another run-of-the-mill, arrogant bad guy with destruction as his only goal.
Until we're treated with the final form of Boo, colloquially known as Kid Boo, or Pure Boo if you're a purist. The epitome of chaotic evil within the series. His only concept is death and destruction on a cosmic scale, and in one fell swoop, we return to the best parts of Boo. Except not really.
Unfortunately, by the time we reach Pure Boo, we've exhausted the saga as a whole. At a whopping 56 chapters and episodes dedicated entirely to Majin Buu, the most interesting parts of his character have been explored, abandoned, then scrambled back together haphazardly, only to leave us cheering Goku's Spirit Bomb on, not to save the universe, but to save us from the story dragging
just to be done with it.
A lot of this stems from implicit fatigue on the part of Toriyama.
Yeah, I can buy that.
Rumors of audience backlash over the direction of the story. Toriyama has never been a stranger to writing by the seat of his pants, and it only becomes more apparent as the series goes on. While the rewrites of the Android and Cell arcs ultimately came together, here, we're left with a lot of problems, and they really do drag Boo and his whole saga down as a whole.
All that being said, we still love Boo. If these deficiencies in his character were only less glaring, perhaps he'd be in our top 3.
You know, we didn't.
I wonder how you guys will
discuss
fix that when it goes to when
his relationship
you
with
guys come
Satan.
to that.
It's such a precious
Yeah.
friendship and comes completely out of nowhere.
He really does help with Satan's character arc, huh? Something I never thought I wanted, but after it was said and done, I'm so happy was part of the series.
Yeah, actually. And Boo in the supporting cast definitely opens up possibilities for some interesting character moments. Speaking of which, well, let's just say get ready for number 5.
5.
Is it Beerus?
Taka, it's your line.
You put a movie villain in the top 5.
Well, he's not just a movie villain.
You're right, he's a movie villain post-GT!
As we've said plenty of times so far, those of you familiar with our last DBCember know that Battle of Gods ranked as our #1 Dragon Ball film. Oh, spoilers, I guess. So you're probably already aware that we have an affinity for the purring purple god of destruction, Beerus.
As previously stated in our Super Villains entry, we're not including Beerus' character moments from Super. This is just Battle of Gods Beerus alone. So, with that out of the way, Beerus is f***ing amazing, and if you disagree with that fact, then you're wrong and probably hate Dragon Ball. Mic drop. Well, I'm not actually going to drop the mic. It's really expensive.
Yeah, I'll bet it is.
What Lanny is trying to say is our selection of Beerus to be in the
That's
top
probably
5
bolted to the table, too.
contributing factors. We're collectively huge fans of his concept. His design is wonderfully unique and full of character. His motivations are fascinating and complex. And his overall personality is fun.
Beerus is a delight. From the moment he awakes from his 39-year-long nap to his final moments trying wasabi for the first time, we're treated to
And destroying a bunch of planets.
Destruction. His expressions are big, his moods are extreme, and his power is overwhelming. He makes for an antagonist with more charm and character than any other movie villain combined.
Now, you'll notice
That and the
Kaiser
fact
said
that he
antagonist.
cannot be
As
beaten.
alluded to in the Supervillains entry, he's not really a villain, but
Yeah.
more a force of conflict for Goku and friends to overcome. But considering his penchant for wholesale genocide and destruction, regardless of whether or not it's his God-given duty, he's really not a good guy. At least not in the majority of the film. He's more comfortable with wiping the Earth and its inhabitants from existence over the smallest infraction.
Including but not limited to not getting any pudding because Boo is a stingy dick. And childishness could
Who
easily come off
licked
as
all the
irritating
pudding.
if it weren't for the way that Beerus carries himself. He's a form of authority, millions of years old, and far more powerful than the entirety of the canon before and after him. With the exception of his attendant Whis, but we'll get to him.
He can come off as effortlessly cool and yet wildly childish at the flip of a switch, and it all just works. But what's even more impressive than his personality is the concept. With creation, first must come destruction, i.e., he's the guy who demolishes the old gas station in Uptown so they can put in that bitchin' artisan pizza shop. It's his job to wipe away the old so new life can emerge. As such, he's justified in his actions of destruction. Well, to a point, anyway.
It's really a moral gray area with Beerus, and that's why he works so well as an antagonist. You know Goku has to win to save the planet, but this is the duty of a god who has outlived him hundreds of thousands of times over. What could have been a boring story about an evil god doing evil things becomes a complex and thrilling romp that expands the lore of the universe.
Also, Whis is a goddamn treat. His majestic, refined, yet totally laid-back and casual nature goes hand in hand with his foodie personality. He's just here for the food. Oh, and rewind time if Beerus goes too bonkers. And when you find out just how powerful he is, the context of his relationship with Beerus, as well as with the rest of the cast, is brought into a whole new light. And the mystery of Whis is both endearing and exciting.
Though you did mention his ability to turn back time. This leads us to Resurrection F. We won't talk about it much here, as by this point they hardly count as antagonists, much less villains. But the film really does just waste them in the second half of the film. However, Whis as a teacher for
That's a
both
fair point.
Vegeta and Goku is a turn that works perfectly. I'll happily take a saga dedicated to that, thank you very much.
Beerus, on the other hand, has no place in the film and actually actively hurts it by being present in some of the bigger scenes. It sucks away all the tension when you know that someone that outranks both Goku and Frieza is just sitting at the sidelines willing to slap every inch of Frieza's gold-plated shit should he threaten the god's never-ending buffet called Earth. He's also basically there to make the same food jokes over and over, and it honestly gets old.
That being said, Beerus and Whis are phenomenal characters who expanded the lore of the franchise, brought Dragon Ball animation back in a big way, and both offered great complex possibilities for the franchise. Now, if only Super would do more with that.
Who wants some champagne? Anyone? No? Okay, just me then.
4.
Yeah, I have to get to that still.
Yes,
So-
perfection.
Our time-traveling robot Bugman has finally arrived, and with him, 3 whole forms to review and critique. From his insidious entrance to his climactic defeat, this villain made one of the biggest impacts on the franchise, both in terms of influence and length. At 57 chapters of the manga and taking up at least 10% of the entire story, he easily cements his spot in the top 4.
But we know what you're thinking. How is the brilliant bioengineered baddie below the top 3? Well, let's first talk about Cell's inception. Remember Kazuhiko Torishima, the guy essentially responsible for Cell's creation?
Don't tell me he whined about Cell's design too, didn't he?
No! Well, not Torishima. In fact, this time it was Toriyama's then current editor, Yu Kondo. Quote Kondo, upon his initial exposure to Cell's first form, "He looks ugly. Of course he can transform." So Toriyama hurried Cell's transformation into his second form, to which Yu Kondo then replied, "This time he looks like a moron, doesn't he? Hurry up and make him into his perfect form." Executive meddling, everyone! For better or for worse.
Toriyama had actually wanted the second
Wow,
one to
that's
play more actively.
interesting.
But Cell's hasty evolution does grace us expediently with his final form that, honestly, is the most iconic of the 3. While the horror film aesthetic of his original form is memorable, and his second form is definitely unique. His perfect form is tall, intimidating, and definitely stands out from the previous villains, while still retaining aspects of his previous 2 forms in a way that all comes together perfectly.
Unlike Frieza, who could change his forms at will, Cell's parasitic evolution requires the sacrifice of others. In his first form, he wipes cities clean of their inhabitants with no remorse, all to add to his own personal power, and to gain perfection, he literally consumes and removes the previous villains of the arc, leaving him the lone, unstoppable essence of evil that would force Gohan to come into his own.
His impact on other characters would certainly be a huge point for him. Goku is urged to bond with his son, Gohan is pushed to new heights that would finally bring him into the true role as hero, the death of Trunks awakens the first true inklings of compassion within Vegeta, and the long-time gap between Piccolo and his former self Kami is finally closed in order to combat this threat.
Not to mention, this is the first time in the history of the series that Goku gives up. Not loses and comes back, but flat out tosses in the towel, leaving Gohan to take up the mantle. Of course, this is with full belief that Gohan will overcome Cell, but for the average viewer, it's utterly shocking to see their hero actually accept defeat.
But something you might notice here is that we've not talked much about his personality. And that's where the cracks in his perfection start to show. Nobody can deny that his initial appearance against Piccolo is dripping with dread and menace, and his insidious nature is on full display throughout the arc as he slips out of one impossible situation to the next, only to overcome almost every one of our heroes.
But when it comes to his motivations and characteristics, nothing really sticks out when he's lined up next to the plethora of big bads that preceded him. It's almost as if the whole shtick of him being made up of other characters' cells works against him, as his final form merely feels like a carbon copy of Frieza, without his patronizing and condescending dialogue and penchant for torture. The Saiyan part of him is a will-used device to help with the creation of the Cell games, and his ability to use other people's techniques does come in handy a couple of times. But by the end of the story, his combination of others' DNA and abilities doesn't really make him all that much more unique.
He does sort of feel more like an obstacle to overcome by the end of the story rather than his own character. However, it's definitely worth mentioning that the actors in the English and Japanese version of the anime, who give him spectacular performances that, much like Frieza, are as much a part of his character as his concept and writing dictate. Damian Clark's evolving cadence and tone leading to a smarmy, pompous, but threatening perfect Cell, and Norio Wakamoto's monstrous depth, texture, and delivery that brings an incomparable presence throughout each form. They're perfect picks, you could say.
And the Father-Son Kamehameha and the transformation into Super Saiyan 2 are monumental moments that ranked high on our first DBCember list. And the transformation into his perfect form, Vegeta's final flash, Goku's sacrifice. You just have so many fantastic scenes and moments to pull from that you can thank, at least partially, to Cell. Also, even the most vitriolic of Bruce Faulkner's haters, Kaiser, agree that the music he created for Cell was at the very least alright and catchy.
To summarize, while Cell's personality may not be exceptionally unique and stand out in comparison to his peers, He's still got a charisma that cannot be denied, and was a conduit for
Look, I like the
change
Faulkner
for every
soundtrack,
character
to be
around
perfectly
him,
honest, but
making for a classic, unforgettable arc.
I never said I was a purist, to be perfectly honest. Alright, so that was parts numbers 6, 5, and 4. Going with Boo, Beerus, and Whis, and Cell. So, who's going to be 3, 2, and Frieza as 1? I'm guessing. Who else? It'd be interesting to see. I'm looking, talk about this one for a second. Okay, so Cell. What was I gonna say? Oh, it was about the music and the purists and all that. And I know this may get me some hate, but I was never really much of a fan of the original Japanese soundtrack. I mean, it's not unlistenable, but I do prefer the American Faulkner soundtrack that was created for the translated version through Funimation and all that. Some of the, and that's just soundtrack with sins. Like some of the dialogue could have been better. The way that they tried to make Goku pretty much into Superman and all that is like just the whole trying to change him into a different type of character. Goku was fine the way he was. The characters are fine the way they were. It's like the changes in personality that they were trying to give with the original. It's like, now, while it's funny when Dragon Ball Z Abridged, when Team 4 Star does it, but I'm moving past the point. Point being that I prefer the American soundtrack of Dragon Ball of the Dragon Ball Z series to the, while, as I said, not unlistenable and enjoyable, the Japanese soundtrack, I don't know, it just never resonated with me as well as with the English version. But, you know, hate if you want, whatever. That's just my personal opinion. Okay, now, starting with part number 5, which are going to be 3, 2, and 1. So now we're down to the top 3 people. Looking forward to seeing who they have as number 2 and 3, because we all know who number 1 is. I mean, I will honestly be shocked if Frieza is not number 1. He is like pretty much the ultimate Dragon Ball Z villain. He really is. So, let's just see who else they chose. Who else is left? I forget. It's been a while since I watched the other ones, but let's take a look. In 3, 2, 1, go. Alright.
3.
Number 3.
So we find
King
out later
Piccolo.
this guy is a
Okay.
son and not a
Yeah.
demon. Not a demon king, but instead a Lord
This joke is so tired, its nickname is Firestone. But you know, it does speak in King Piccolo's favor that they decided to just rip him off whole hog and search for a decent movie villain.
It's worth noting that these top 3 are all favorites in our eyes. While certain criteria may have put them in a particular order, to us, these last 3 villains are the best the series has to offer, and the finer qualities of each were coined in large part by the demon Namekian sluglord himself, King Piccolo.
By the time the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament was wrapping up,
Yeah.
there were plenty of villains.
I'll agree with
The
that.
comedic trio of the Pilaf Gang, the ambitious and terrible Red Ribbon Army, the professional assassin Tao Pai Pai, even Baba's troop of monstrous misfits and the Crane School.
Quick note, Ten Shinhan didn't make the list because he barely even qualified as an antagonist and hardly even commits any acts of villainy besides breaking Yamcha's leg, which, while terrible, ranks kinda low.
But it was with the entrance of the
Yeah, that
terrifying
was
King
just-
Piccolo that we were
Yamcha got better.
introduced to a true out-and-out
Until he
big
died.
bad.
They
An
got better.
all-powerful Demon King with sights sets on world domination and the means to do it, sparing nobody in his merciless, bloody conquest to secure his place atop a throne of bodies and rubble.
And it is both bloody and merciless. After being set free from his prison, forced upon him by Master Roshi's late master Mutaito, the first thing on his to-do list is knocking off every single fighter he can find so nobody can put him back where he belongs. Spitting out more children
Naturally.
than an Irish Catholic rabbit, he makes quick work of numerous previous antagonists from the World Martial Arts Tournament, including Nom, Girin, Manwolf, and even
Krillin, no!
Yeah, see? We're all familiar with death in Dragon Ball. But at this point in the series,
Yeah, it's
Krillin's
such a
death is
non-issue.
completely shocking and
No.
unprecedented. The manner in which it happens as well is enough to make your blood run cold as he's helplessly murdered by Piccolo's henchmen, leaving his body for his friends to find and Goku furious.
It was rare until this point
Yeah.
to see Goku this heartbroken and angry over, well, anything. But the death of Krillin leaves him in a blind rage that ends up nearly getting him killed. Twice. It's a rampage of revenge and destruction that leads him to King Piccolo, and a fierce fight that leaves him having to use the ultra-convenient ultra-divine water to stand any chance.
King Piccolo is a frightening, imposing, monstrously strong beast of a villain at this point in the series. His green and purple color scheme work well with his towering figure, and he definitely carries an air of authority around him. Ruling through fist and fear, he gets shit done. All with a veritable orchestra of musically inspired henchmen to do his bidding. Can I just take a second to admit how crazy it is that Piccolo and all his henchmen are named after instruments, yet still manage to be intimidating? I mean, except for piano?
By the time he's made his wish on the Dragon Balls to gain back his youth, he's seen to the death of 3 of the main ensemble, including Krillin, Roshi, and Chaozu. And then, in a move never before seen nor repeated, he kills Shenron firsthand, removing any hope of bringing them back. It's a shocking scene that raises the stakes of the arc to record highs and makes the ensuing battle all the more tense.
What Piccolo does with his youth is also pretty compelling.
Yeah, but then
He
Shenron comes
immediately
back
takes over
and-
the entire world, then proceeds to implement his own twisted laws. He even begins a lottery to pick which province he'd attack with his demonic henchmen, nearly getting Bulma's parents killed. It's only thanks to Ten Shinhan that he doesn't wipe them and their city off the face of the earth.
And throughout all of this, his evil, twisted personality is on full display. Whether it be in battle or his role as ruler, everything he does is as dark and twisted as you can get while still keeping this a kid's show. From taking control of the world, murdering all opponents, making crime legal, and even betraying the lovable, unforgettable Pilaf trio.
By the way, they're also in the arc and they're a ton of fun.
He causes no end of grief and suffering for the entire world.
And his battle with Goku really emphasizes his underhanded, villainous character. He uses every dirty tactic he can think of to beat Goku in both of their fights, going as far as to take Ten Shinhan as hostage and then cripple Goku, both as a manner of achieving his victory and flat-out torture. Of course, Goku barely manages to scrap together a win, but never before in the series has he had to fight as hard as he does here.
If there's any strikes against him, it's that he certainly
Yeah.
doesn't have much depth besides being incredibly evil, but the visuals and his actions within the story do more than enough to sell him, regardless of a lack of complex motives. Some people just want to see the world burn, and Piccolo is happy to provide the kerosene and matches.
You could also say that his use of the Dragon Balls to wish back his youth instead of immortality could be a flaw, but that's arguable too. Also, the manner in which Goku powers up is easily one of the cheapest and least satisfying in the series. But that's more of a mark against the arc and less the character himself. And it's still one of the best arcs in the series, easily the best pre-Z.
King Piccolo set the template for main villains of Dragon Ball, and would be a high bar to hit moving forward. A towering, terrifying, tenacious tyrant, he earns his spot firmly at number 3. Hail to the king, baby.
2,
Yeah,
But what would come after a king but a
Vegeta.
prince?
Well, a couple of arcs later anyway.
What is the process of succession within the Saiyan hierarchy? Is it like Klingons? Would he have had to have killed his father to become king?
Bet his wife.
Regardless, much like a prince to a king, Prince Vegeta ranks at number 2. Barely, I might add. There's a pretty decent argument for him being numero uno, but that spot has been dominated pretty firmly by...
Hey, don't spoil people, Kaiser.
Oh, like we haven't figured
Because
that
who
one
else
out.
could it be?
Vegeta is a complex and polarizing character whose impact on the series can hardly be measured. Fans of the series need little backstory. He's the Saiyan Prince. He came to Earth for immortality via the Dragon Balls, but Goku and friends send him packing. He then goes on to be a staple for the series in a big way.
While Raditz may have opened the entire world of Dragon Ball up to the introduction of monkeys in space, it was the appearance of Vegeta with his bald, burly bestie Nappa that truly set things on a crazy new course.
Vegeta's design is unique, and in a good way. While most characters would never be able to pull off the troll doll hair and a height that leaves him chest-high with most of the cast, his ever-present smirk and steely eyes, accompanied by a posture and presence that just screams confidence, instantly communicates his personality.
But he's a lot more than he looks. His first appearance in the Saiyan saga uses his partner Nappa to full advantage. His clear authority over Nappa tells the audience, through Nappa's actions, that this character is clearly the more terrifying of the two. And when the Bald Bruiser has murdered his way through most of the present cast, you can only assume that Vegeta must be unstoppable.
And when he does throw down with Goku, it's a marvelous battle. A Saiyan elite
It
versus
really
Bulma
was.
in a drag-out, no-holds-barred spectacle that pushes them both to the very brink, in a beam struggle that has arguably never been topped, even edging out Gohan versus Cell for many.
Of course, after his loss on Earth, which took the combined efforts of every single surviving warrior on the battlefield, he would continue to be a big player in the coming Namek saga. With his own selfish goals in mind, he continues the role of villain masterfully, even as an even bigger, badder figure looms over him and the heroes. This is Vegeta at some of his best, too. Outsmarting and outfighting opponents on all
Bigger.
sides, sneaking around and
Figuratively.
strategically murdering his way to victory, until everything comes crashing down for him, as things with Vegeta want to do.
One word that is completely inseparable from Vegeta is...
Short?
No.
Annoying?
Okay.
Narcissistic.
Come on.
What else speaks?
The Napoleon complex.
Okay, now you're using two words. It's pride. Vegeta is a proud warrior due to his own inherent strength, his status, and the race from which he hails. He is the prince of all Saiyans, and it's as intrinsic to his character as his spiky hair and affinity for tights.
Which leads us straight into possibly the most defining aspect of Vegeta's character, his rivalry with Goku. While the idea of a rival for a main character had been thrown around more than a few times, few characters actually pursued this goal as feverishly as Vegeta did, and none for nearly the same length of time. While Piccolo's grudge definitely
that's very
sticks
true.
around for a good while, it's all but squashed by the time he's dying for the man's son.
And it's through that rivalry that Vegeta finds both urgency and development. After his crippling defeat at
To
the
be
hands
fair,
of
to
Frieza,
this day,
he
they're
leaves his dying
rivals. I mean,
wishes to
friends,
Goku.
yes, but
upon his resurrection,
rivals forever.
murdering Prince's goals become crystal clear and solitary. Become stronger than Goku. While this overwhelming drive to defeat his rival propels him to new heights through the Cell Saga, in which I might add, he toes the line between anti-villain and full-on villain on several occasions.
How many people does he murder in his fight with Android 18?
And how many does he put at risk when he lets semi-perfect Cell absorb her? Oh right, all of them.
It isn't until the Buu saga when we see it come full circle. After the death of future Trunks, we see a much more subdued, almost domesticated Vegeta. With Goku out of the picture, he's focused mostly on keeping up with his training rather than dominating his now deceased rival.
But when Goku re-enters the picture and Vegeta is faced with the reality of the power gap between them, his final act as a villain plays out. Through a Faustian bargain, he gains a tremendous power-up, but at the loss of any moral fiber he may have developed through the series. He careens the fight against Babidi into a grudge match against Goku, slaughtering thousands in a show of intent.
This fight is among the finest in the series as well, showcasing fantastic choreography
Yeah, that
and
grin
memorable
was
battle
always
moments
just-
that all add up to one of the most powerful moving scenes in Dragon Ball, his sacrifice to defeat Majin Buu. And this is where the true complexity of Vegeta comes into play.
We've mentioned his role as an anti-villain before. His goals have never been for the greater good, even after they have switched from immortality to defeating threats against our heroes. He acts autonomously and with zero regard for the people around him, including allies, his wife, and his baby son. While he reigns in his violence post-Frieza, this seems more a means to an end than anything. He knows that if he causes trouble, his chances at a fair rematch with Goku go down the drain.
Which is why it's so understandable that when Goku disappears for good, he loses his will to fight and improve with the ferocity on display in the previous arcs. It isn't until Goku makes his reappearance that all those feelings come flooding back, and he makes the worst decision of his life. As amazing as it sounds, Vegeta does not become a good person until the end of the series. It's through his sacrifice that he finally finds redemption, and even then, his single-minded obsession with overcoming Goku isn't properly settled until nearly the end of the entire saga.
And that's what makes his development so incredible. At no point before Buu does he ever fight for anyone else, even when his goals happen to overlap with others. He is a selfish, violent, merciless bastard throughout nearly the entirety of the series proper, which is what makes him such a great parallel to Goku, whose actions are largely selfish and single-minded as well. though with far more care for the world and people around him. The rivalry between these two works on every level.
It's also worth noting that it's Vegeta's actions that most commonly lead to more conflict. He goads Frieza into transforming, argues against finding Jiro before the creation of the androids, allows Semi-Perfect Cell to absorb Android 18 becoming perfect, and leads to the release of Majin Buu. No other character is this detrimental to the hero so consistently.
But through his redemption, we find a character who is now
they
even
always
more
have
ripe
good
for
points in these
exploration
things.
and development. A reformed, genocidal Prince of Death come family man, dead set on protecting his family and his newly accepted home. Which is why his segments in Battle of Gods and Resurrection F are some of the absolute best. Hell, even Super does tremendous things with him, giving him some of the shining moments of the entire show.
To close, Vegeta starts as a bad man, but ends up being one of the most classic and important characters in the series. Temperamental, violent, and proud, he is the best example of a reformed villain in the series, and we think the second best villain from top to bottom. Now, tune in next time for something that may come as a surprise to all of you, who've never heard the name Frieza in your lives anyway.
Here's a list of our honorable mentions.
Oh, the snipers, I forgot about that.
Ha! You fools!
Frieza, that's boring. What do you look like, sheep to you?
No, it's
Bullshit.
Monster Carrot. Points in favor? 1, look at his design. Shades, baller, suit, red, purple, and baby poop green. Nobody's cooler. 2, he could turn people into carrots. That's terrifying! How can you beat him if you're a carrot? Overload him with vitamin A, give him tooth decay with excess sugar? Unless your name starts with a V and ends with Ed Gito, get the out of here. 3, he's a mob boss. He'll put a hit on your ass if he doesn't see to your demise himself. 4, he makes mochi on the moon. That's goddamn classy. Points against? Nothing. Monster Carrot's the best. Now he's out to go make 1,000,000 bunny babies and take over the world. DBCember, out.
Total fake up.
How many people thought it wasn't going to be Frieza at number 1? Sure, you could call us boring, but we don't find value in contrarianism just for its own sake. Some things are obvious because they are right. Not that it's necessarily wrong to think that the number 1 slot should go to Vegeta, King Piccolo, or even Cell or anybody else on this list, frankly, given your preference. But the truth is, we couldn't see anyone else but the Galactic Emperor himself sitting at the top.
His role in the universe is one of the first and most vital parts of Frieza's character. Whereas other villains in the series had built up to galaxy-wide domination, it is Frieza who holds the title of full-on Emperor. With dozens, if not hundreds, of races under his employment and/or subjugation, this mighty horned potentate is not just a surprise for our heroes once they touch down on Namek, but the biggest threat they've ever faced.
Whereas Cell's power and ambition reached only as far as the Earth, and poor King Kai's planet. And Buu's antics rarely amounted to much more than the loss of a few planets in the grand scheme of things. Frieza is the ruler of races and worlds. His impact within the universe spans farther than any other.
What's truly terrifying about him is something we saw on a lesser scale in Vegeta. In Frieza's assault on Namek, we witness henchmen who dwarf our heroes in every manner at Frieza's beck and call, taking orders without the slightest argument and showing a bottomless fear at the slightest hint of his displeasure. He is their master. And as we watch Vegeta struggling
fuck with him.
to stay alive against these monsters, it's frightening what depths of power this Napoleonic madman could be hiding.
And while he certainly takes his time to get going, each step he takes to his final form leaves bodies in the imprints. He dominates every single one of our heroes with a fraction of his strength and is an unstoppable force through the entire saga, only bowing to Son Goku after forcing him to fulfill an ancient millennia-old alien prophecy.
He has no problem torturing and murdering Nail, Krillin, Dende, Vegeta, and almost Gohan and Piccolo, as he exemplifies his mastery of not just the galaxy, but life itself. With each new form, we're awakened to a fresh new hell. Jeez, I feel like you could write some pretty sick metal lyrics about this guy. Oh, wait. They did.
But what makes Frieza such a fascinating character isn't just his strength and impact on the universe, but his personality. While his power and composure are imposing, His overall demeanor contrasts this wickedly. While not talking too much about the Japanese side of things, his original voice actor, Ryusei Nakao, is a delight, and the original writing for him in the manga and anime are a treat. His dialogue is flowery, polite, and aristocratic to a T, so much so that he comes off as condescending and patronizing to those who he chooses to bargain with.
And while certain English interpretations of him would vary wildly, Christopher Ayers-Kai knocks these qualities out of the park as he finds a middle ground between superiority and petulance, handling his wordier exchanges with a Shakespearean talent and shaking you down to the core whenever the heavier, more violent moments come into play.
There's something so slimy and hateful about the way he communicates with others. Think Hans Landa mixed with Emperor Palpatine colored by Dr. Frankenfurter. He's so confident and comfortable with his position that he finds...
Interesting comparison.
The haggling and threatening of the Namekian villagers is loquacious and articulate, but tinged with an undeniable lust for blood and power, and a disdain for the impudent.
And when he finally starts to lose ground, his calm, polite demeanor crashes with wild results. He screams, hollers, and digs deep into his bag of insults and threats against his opponents, undermining his composure in a way that is shocking, threatening, yet oddly satisfying. He's a spoiled brat through and through, but one who can easily wipe you and your planet off the face of the star map with so much as a thought and a wave of the hand.
Of course,
Yeah, I mean, at that...
his biggest flaw, but that is all just part of his character. The only hope our heroes have on several occasions is that their actions will be beneath Frieza's notice. Whether
And
it be
up until that
latest
point, he was like the first
Frieza's
one.
rules,
I'm going
or
to talk
his
about that in a
genocide of
minute,
the
but...
Namekians, leaving him without a way to use them. Not to mention his dilly-dallying with Son Goku, leading to his ultimate defeat. These moments showcase the flaws that make a perfect villain. Sorry, Sal, you're still my boo.
While perfect certainly is subjective, of course, we can't think of any other villain in the series that checks as many boxes as he does. A major one, of course, being his impact on the franchise. Just ask someone to name some villains in Dragon Ball, and you'll note that a good majority of them name Frieza first. He's also a catalyst for the biggest transformation in the entire series that would change the story and tone of the rest of its run. The Super Saiyan.
He even managed to inspire the familial spin-off Cooler. I mean, sure, he was only one entry above bookending this list, but it's still pretty amazing when you're so popular they start making films about your brother. Also, he had a dad, too. Say hello to King Cole before he... Oh, he's dad.
And have you seen any films about Platinum Cell, Diamond Boo? No, you got Golden Frieza in all his tacky glory. Sure, the film itself certainly has its flaws, but the overall point is, it's all about Frieza. No other villain in the series has a comeback like this, with perhaps the exception of Vegeta. And while the Prince may have done it better, Frieza did it bigger.
Frieza did everything bigger, from his film to his empire. Hell, his power level was so big that they stopped even talking about them after he died. He would then go on to be a measuring stick for all villains after, by both other characters and the fandom itself. When everyone is comparing themselves to you, you know you've made it.
From his slimy, delightfully evil demeanor to his unfathomable strength to his unique, ever-changing design, Frieza locks himself into the #1 slot on our list, and in our hearts. All hail Lord Frieza! May his reign be long and... Well, this has been DBCember.
Thanks once again for joining us on this journey of things we love and tolerate about Dragon Ball.
There's no end in sight for this franchise as Super enters the Universe Survival arc next year, and we're excited to see where the franchise will go.
And you can expect us to follow each and every step along the way. Leave your comments below and make sure to join us next year as we discuss the top 24 reasons Monster Carrot is actually the best.
Number 24, Bunny Car, aka Bunny Honey Fur Magnet.
Until then, sayonara, and happy DBCember.
Yeah, Monster Carrot is the best. Okay. Yeah, that's the thing with the Broly movie, or the DBZ Abridged Broly movie. Then part 1 is out. I wonder if I should wait for part 2 and just watch it together, or if I should do part 1. Either way, yeah, I'll figure that one out later. Now, let's see. Do I have any disagreements on this one? Oddly enough, no. It's like knew that Frieza was going to be #1. That fake out didn't fake me out at all. He's like, knew that. That's got to be fake. They can't possibly mean Monster Carrot. If they did, then at the end of that video, I would have been really, really fucking pissed off. But yeah, of course it had to be Frieza. Oh, and the thing that I was about to start talking is like, wait, no. Listen to what they're saying first. Don't talk over them so much like that. You know, I get that's the point of these commentaries, that you're supposed to be able to do shit like that, but not if I can't hear what they're saying too. If you want to hear what they're saying, go watch the original. Of course, watch the original first, and then come listen to my stupid ass talk about this shit. But the thing about Frieza is that up until that point of the series, there was no character that was like, there was no villain that was a planet destroyer. And Frieza had the power to destroy a fucking planet. Up until that point, you didn't, like, that type of menace wasn't really around. It's like there were people who ruled the planet. You had King Piccolo. Vegeta may have been close to being a planet destroyer, but they never really even touched on that. So Vegeta was the first one that they ever showed in the series to actually destroy a freaking planet. Of course, it took them 5 minutes for the damn thing to blow up, but you know what I mean. So yeah, that type of thing is like brought that series to a whole different level. It's like he was the first step to going through what they're doing now and where they went through and all of that. And why I love the series so much. There was one thing about King Piccolo I wanted to say. I had almost forgotten. I think I did kind of forget it. That he killed Shenron, but this is the point of the whole Dragon Ball series, is that death is really just such a non-issue. They never really touch on it again. I don't think they ever did touch on it, did they? That Shenron was destroyed because he wasn't. He was fucking back. Oh. The bigger problem was Nappa killing Piccolo, which took out communists and created this whole space race and all that. It's like, well, not a space race, but okay, so I mean, that thing created this whole arc as to having to go to Namek, and the whole Frieza stuff never would have happened if it wasn't for that. But yeah, I pretty much agree with everything that they said on this entire list. But yeah, I'm looking forward to next year when they talk about the 24 top things about Monster Carrot. So I want to thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Be sure to support the original. Links are in the description below. Not the original, but the YouTube version. Links are in the description below. And until next time, take care. Bye.